Welcome back to the 757 at 6 here on ESPN Radio 94.1. I am Matthew Hatfield, and we're joined by a special guest at this time, longtime award-winning broadcaster for the Cincinnati Reds in his 46th and final season on the microphone, and a native of Portsmouth, Virginia, who began his career in 1971 as a radio announcer for the Tidewater Tides. He's also called Virginia Squires games of the ABA, Virginia Tech, William and Mary, the Indiana Pacers. He's a Virginia Sports Hall of Famer, and in the National Radio Hall of Fame, we say hello to Marty Brennaman. Marty, congrats on a great career. How's the spring treating you?
Spring has been good so far, Matthew. It's been a winter that won't go away. It's finally starting to break here in Cincinnati. It's getting hot, and I think most people associate baseball with hot weather, and finally we're getting it. I had grave doubts that we'd ever see warm weather, and I laughed at this business about the warming situation that people maintain we're going through in this world, because I haven't seen it here in Cincinnati lately.
Well, we envy you. We've got into the almost triple digits here at the end of May, so hopefully we get a little bit of a cool streak going, but I know it's going to get hotter and hotter, I imagine, as we get to July and August. But has it hit you yet? You've had just a decorated career calling all kinds of sports, especially baseball. Your final season is here, and how's it feeling for you?
Well, so far, it's really, as far as being at home is concerned, it feels normal. I mean, it's just like another baseball season, because whatever the team plans on doing will not be done until the end of the season, August and September. But on the road, that's been kind of nice. I've been acknowledged by all the teams in which the Reds have played only one time. You know, they play all the teams outside their divisions once at home and once on the road. And we've been to San Diego, and we've been to New York and San Francisco, and it's been rather nice. They have acknowledged the fact that it's my last year, and it's been really nice, especially in San Francisco, because the guys that do the Giants games are really good friends of mine, John Miller and Dave Fleming and Dwayne Kuiper and Mike Krukow, and they presented me with a caricature done by a very popular local artist in San Francisco, which is something they didn't have to do. So it's been more noted on the road than it has here at home. And as I said, it'll be happening sometime toward the end of the season.
It's pretty cool. Now, I read in doing some research on you that you grew up and wanted to be an actor at first and then a pro athlete, but did not really have the goods for those things. You've had a great career as a broadcaster. Tell us how that all came about. You wanted to be an actor and then a pro athlete, and then you became a broadcaster.
No, I never wanted to be a pro athlete.
Okay.
I knew what my limitations were. I was not very big, and I grew up in Portsmouth and went to Woodrow Wilson High School, the building of which is no longer even there, much to my dismay. And I had a great experience growing up in Portsmouth, and my mom and dad were working class people. We were a very middle class family. I've got a brother who is in the insurance business that lives out towards Suffolk today, Tom Brennaman. And I did want to be an actor. I did a lot of work in the theater, was very active in high school and doing that, and did some summer stock work. And once I got to college, and my first couple of years in college, and I really had aspirations even before I got to college that I wanted to be an actor, and really didn't want to go to college, and wanted to go to New York and try to break in the professional theater. And my mom and dad put me in touch with a couple of guys that were working on Broadway that were starving to death, and I decided, no pun intended, I didn't have the stomach for that. So this is essentially was my second choice. I wanted to be a broadcaster, and I didn't want to be a guy that sat in the studio. I wanted to be a play-by-play guy. Really no emphasis on one particular sport. I was a huge baseball fan growing up in Portsmouth. Used to listen a lot to the old Washington Senators and listened a lot to the Baltimore Orioles way back in the 50s and the Pittsburgh Pirates at night, and really thought that would be a great way to make a living and be involved in athletics. And I used to listen to a guy on the radio in the 50s named Nat Albright, who did Brooklyn Dodger games, and was stunned years later to find out that he was recreating games from a radio studio in Arlington, Virginia. I didn't even know what recreation was back then, but I was so enthralled by his voice and by his presentation. And I think he was the one guy that subconsciously planted the seed in my mind that that's what I wanted to do. So I went to Randolph-Macon College right out of high school, and stayed there for 2.5 years, and then transferred to Chapel Hill and got my degree in communications, and did a little work on the Tar Heel Sports Network. They had a fellow that did their games by the name of Bill Curry, and the broadcast department people let him know that was a business I wanted to get into, so he gave me a little bit of work during the basketball season on the Carolina Network. And from that out there, I went to a small radio station in Salisbury, North Carolina, WSTP, and was there for 5 years and did Legion baseball and did Catawba College football and basketball and high school football. I did as much as you humanly possibly could do, along with selling radio time during the day. And then I got the opportunity to come back to Tidewater and got hired by, at that time it was WTAR, I guess it's WTKR now. And a fellow by the name of Jack Prince hired me, who I'll always be indebted to for bringing me to the market to do Virginia Squires games. And that was an incredibly wonderful experience for me, doing ABA basketball for 3.5 years. And while I was there, I got a chance to do the Tidewater Tides games, and God bless Dave Rosenfield, who has passed on. I probably owe a debt of gratitude to him than anybody, because he was a guy that not only agreed to let me do Tidewater games when I really had no other baseball experience, but American Legion baseball down in Carolina, and was the guy who recommended me for the Cincinnati Reds job back in November of '73. So I've been very fortunate. I enjoyed the 1 year I did of William & Mary college football, and the 1 year I did at Virginia Tech, and I've been blessed. I was hired here, and despite a lot of opportunities to go to other ball clubs over the years, at the end of the day, I decided to stay where I am, and now I'm one of about 7 guys that have 40-plus years in broadcasting big league baseball, and they did it for only one team. So I'm in a pretty exclusive club there, which I'm very proud of, because it's a very transient business. Guys always think the grass is greener on the other side, and I don't think I ever really felt that way. I love Cincinnati. It's been a great town for me to live in and help to raise 3 kids in. And as I look back on it now, there's no decision that I ever regretted making in terms of whether or not I should stay or leave. And in that respect, I'm blessed, and I'm very, very happy that things have worked out the way they have.
We're chatting with Marty Brennaman, the golden voice of the Cincinnati Reds baseball team in his 46th and final season on the microphone here on the 757 at 6 on ESPN Radio 94.1. Marty, a native out of Portsmouth and Woodrow Wilson High School. Many of you know him from his days calling the Tidewater Tides and the Virginia Squires, as well as some Virginia Tech and William & Mary. He's a Virginia Sports Hall of Famer and in the National Radio Hall of Fame. And Marty, you just hit on it a little bit about the late, great Dave Rosenfield and what he meant to helping jumpstart your broadcasting career. Your memories of those days in the 1970s calling the Tides?
Well, they were great memories. Dave took me on and was extremely good to me. I can't say enough good things about him and the things that he did for me, and accepted my work initially, and maybe, I don't know, maybe I wasn't really good enough to take on a AAA job, but I was in town, and he agreed with the station that I would do the games, and I think, quite honestly, I got better as the time went on, and I traveled with the team. We went all over the International League to Syracuse and Rochester, and Hampton Roads had a team at that time, and we even went to Winnipeg, Canada. Montreal had a AAA club in Winnipeg for 1 year, so we went everywhere. All the games were broadcast live, and at one time I worked, I think 1 year I worked with a fellow by the name of Dick Frame, who has been very active in Old Dominion University sports, has been very, very successful in the broadcast business world, and now lives in Las Vegas with he and his wife Kay, and Dick worked with me 1 year, and it was just a great experience. I came in touch with great people, those who had been in the big leagues and were now at AAA, those who were trying to get to the big leagues, and some former Met players that were very, very good. John Matlack was a pitcher on that team. Jim Bibby, who was very successful, who's passed away a number of years ago, was a very successful Pittsburgh Pirate pitcher when he got to the big leagues. And so fellows like that I got to know and really got a feel for what professional baseball was all about, and learned a lot. The first year I was there, Hank Bauer, who was a former great Yankee and had even managed the Baltimore Orioles very successfully in the late 60s, managed the Tidewater Club in 1971, and Hank was great with me, very gruff ex-Marine DI sergeant, and was a tough guy, but he was good with me. He helped me find my way initially in terms of professional baseball and learn about the game itself. And so I have nothing but great memories about doing the Tidewater games, and never dreamed that at the end of 3 years that I would have a chance to go do big league baseball. Had it not been for a chance meeting between Dave and, at that time, the Reds' assistant general manager, a fellow by the name of Dick Wagner. They ran into each other at the baseball winter meetings in Houston, Texas, in November of '73, just a chance meeting. And during the course of the conversation, Dick made the comment to Dave that they had lost Al Michaels to the San Francisco Giants, and they were looking for a lead announcer. And Dave said without any hesitation, I've got a guy who does my games who I think is ready to broadcast in the big leagues. And Dick said, tell him to send me a tape. And Dave got back from the meetings, and I was living in Virginia Beach. And he called me on the phone, told me about the meeting, and said, do you have a tape? I said, yeah, but I've only got one. And that's a tape of a game that I did between the Tides and the Rochester Red Wings up at Old Silver Stadium in Rochester. And he said, send him the tape. And so I did. And one thing led to another, and they whittled the list down. And finally they gave me a call and said, we'd like you to come into Cincinnati and for an interview. And so I really had, to be honest with you, Matthew, I didn't have a whole lot of interest in the job. At the time, I was immersed in doing Squires games and traveling all over the country and thoroughly enjoying that. I mean, being around people like Julius Erving and Charlie Scott and George Gervin and Ray Scott and people like that. It was just Neil Johnson, who I think still lives down there in the Tidewater area. It was a kick for me to be involved in something like that. But I applied for the job simply because Dave thought enough of my work to recommend me. And I ended up getting it. You know, I think once I found out they narrowed the list down to 10, at that point I decided that, and I thought, well, maybe you're better than you think you are. And I decided at that point I wanted the job. And they flew me in, and I spent 2 nights here before I had to go to Indianapolis to do a Squires and Pacers game on a Saturday night, and ended up getting the job. But my experience there was great. I love living at the beach. I was basically home because my mom and dad at that time were still living in Portsmouth, and my brother was there. And so it was a wonderful experience to be able to come back to the area that you were born and raised in, albeit for only a brief time, as it turned out, 3.5 years before I came to Cincinnati. But it was a great experience from top to bottom. I have no complaints at all about being back down there in the Tidewater area and experiencing both big-time professional basketball at the time and AAA baseball.
I'll get to this year's Cincinnati Reds team in a moment here, Marty, and appreciate your time here. I want to chat about, though, you broadcast 11 Final Fours, 15 regionals in the NCAA men's basketball, and some of the moments you've gotten a chance to call, from Tom Seaver's no-hitter in '78 to Tom Browning's perfect game in '88, Pete Rose becoming the all-time hits leader, Ken Griffey Jr. getting to milestones such as home run number 500 and 600, and, of course, World Series for the Cincinnati Reds in '75, '76, and 1990. Any one or two favorite moments for you? I know there's a bunch, but any one or two that really stick out for you?
Well, I've been asked that question a lot since I announced that I was going to retire at the end of the year, and people are surprised because when they ask the question, they assume that the comeback is going to involve Pete or involve Tom Seaver's only no-hitter or Browning's perfect game. But I think as a play-by-play guy, and I'm my own worst critic, I know if I screw something up, I don't need to be told by somebody. I know that. And I think when you are heading toward or a big event relative to the team you're working for is imminent, you think about it, but I've never been one to try and plan what I'm going to say. And some guys do that. I don't think I'm good enough to do that and pull it off and make it sound like it's spontaneous. So the only thing I hope for when I had those opportunities was to be able to convey to people listening the emotion of the event, what's happening as the aftermath of the event, and do it in a clean, concise manner and not stumble over words. And the two calls that probably I'm most proud of would involve Ken Griffey Jr.'s 500th home run, which he hit off Matt Morris in St. Louis on a Father's Day, and the home run that outfielder that the Reds had at the time, who was a very good player for us and now is with the Seattle Mariners, Jay Bruce, hit a home run at the bottom of the 9th inning in a September game in 2010 off the Houston Astros to win a game, and that win sent them into the postseason. And then they were two calls that I really enjoyed. And the funny thing about the Griffey home run was that I'd known Ken Griffey Jr. since he was a little boy. His dad was a good buddy of mine and still is today. And I used to shoo him away in the clubhouse like a lot of players did. He'd be in the clubhouse, and I'd say, you're getting underfoot. You're keeping guys from getting ready to play. Just move on. And so I'd known him all through school, and periodically I'd see him. And so when he's sitting on 497 or 498 home runs, he came to me one day, and he said, I want you to make the call. He said, you've known me since I was a little boy, and he said it would be really important to me if you have the call of my home run when I hit it. And I said, I'd be honored to, and I appreciate you feeling that way. I said, but I do every inning except 3, 4, and 7. And my partner does those 3 innings. I said, if that home run comes in one of those 3 innings, he's going to do it. And he said, no, you don't understand. I want you to do it. I said, no, you don't understand. I am not going to take away from someone else an at-bat that might be historic just because you want me to do it. I said, if it's in the 3rd and the 4th and the 7th, I'm not going to do it. Well, it got to be such an issue that we finally had to sit down with the club officials. And I explained my position. I know of situations where guys have taken innings or at-bats away from a particular broadcaster because they wanted their voice to be on that call. I don't have an ego that big. I didn't feel like if it was going to be in one of the innings that I normally work, that's fine. Then I should have it, but I shouldn't have it if it's in one of those 3 innings. And it all came down to when I realized I was fighting a losing battle. I finally said the only way I'm going to agree to this is if the club puts out a release announcing exactly what we're talking about, that this was not my idea, this was his idea. And so when he comes to the plate, if it's in the 3rd or 4th or 7th, until he breaks a record, I would have the call of that at-bat. And I was very uncomfortable doing that, but as it turned out, when he hit the home run in St. Louis, it came in an inning that I was working anyway. And then fast forward about 3 more years, and now he's sitting at 597 home runs, and he comes up to me one day and said, we need to talk. I said, don't tell me we're going to go down this road again. He said, yep, we are. And so we had to do the same thing, and he hit his 600th home run down in Miami against the Marlins, and that was not nearly as great a call simply because there was nobody in the ballpark. In St. Louis, it was almost a full house, and it was really cool, and it was on Father's Day, and
sure.
And the St. Louis fans are great fans. They acknowledged him with a standing ovation when he hit the home run, and it was just a nice experience. But the other calls were good. The Rose call of 41-92 and Tom Seaver's only no-hitter, which I felt would be a crime for him to go into the Baseball Hall of Fame never having pitched one. He had pitched 5 one-hitters, 3 of which were no-hitters that were broken up in the 9th inning. And so that was a kick to do that. And then Browning's perfect game, there are not too many perfect games. They don't fall off of trees every day. And that was a cool deal. And I've been lucky. I've had 7 no-hitters in the years that I've been around, and 6 of them were no-hitters, and 1 was a perfect game. So I'm pretty conversant about no-hitters that I've seen and called over the course of 4.5 decades.